Honourable Member for Calgary-Lougheed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. What I'm about to say comes with the greatest of respect, personally, professionally, and politically. I trust that it will be taken in the way in which it is given. That said, I must say that I believe, Mr. Speaker, it is shocking that with less than 72 hours left in the spring session as scheduled, the NDP has tabled crucial documents directly related to the life and death of Albertans and dedicated a mere 6 hours to the most important decision of any person's life. However, with humility, it may be said that in certain ways I've been preparing this speech for a long, long time, in that my introduction to public speaking was in grade 7 when I was asked to deliver a speech to 555 junior high school classmates at a joint public and Catholic high school. And the topic, nothing less than the importance of the Hippocratic Oath for the medical profession to do good and do no harm. Mr. Speaker, I would like to read the entire oath into the record, but since the government is granting limited time to this debate, I will refer to 2 excerpts only. The first, I will use treatment to help the sick according to my ability and judgment, but never with a view to injury and wrongdoing. Neither will I administer a poison to anybody when asked to do so, nor will I suggest such a course. And secondly, into whatsoever house I enter, I will enter to help the sick, and I will abstain from all intentional wrongdoing and harm, especially from abusing the bodies of a man or a woman. Mr. Speaker, quoting the Hippocratic Oath in that public speaking experience led to a couple of related degrees and a master's, as well as a few decades in the School of Hard Knocks, which leads us to this day. When I couple experiences like these with reliable and trusted research, I'm actually quite calm and confident with what I'm about to share with you here and now. And I'll start with this. Alberta's overdue assisted dying debate is too little too late. Not my words, Mr. Speaker. This is the dramatic headline from an article by Paula Simons in today's Edmonton Journal on the website. She uses phrases like jaw-dropping in reference to answers recently provided by the health minister with respect to assisted dying. She goes on, and I quote, "It's a telling comment, not just because of its seeming insensitivity, but because it underlines just how ill-prepared Alberta is. We're about to embark on a social, scientific, and ethical experiment that redefines power relations between patients, doctors, and the law. It's a tectonic cultural shift that may change forever the way we define self-determination, personal liberty, and the quality of life. Yet, legally and politically, we're just not ready for this transition. But this debate, this is too little, too late. The government had a chance to show real moral and political leadership, and instead, we're getting some vague, rushed, symbolic debate of high-level principles that will allegedly guide regulations that have already been drafted. After that, it may take another 2 to 3 weeks to get those regulations to the cabinet table to be debated and passed by order in council. Assuming C-14, which doesn't even conform with the Carter rule, fails to get through the Senate before then, we'll be left in regulatory limbo." Again, not my words. This is from the article in the Edmonton Journal. Mr. Speaker, if that does not give members pause, perhaps this headline will. Experts warn against rushed assisted dying bill through Parliament, by Colette Derwitz of the Calgary Herald just yesterday. And I quote, "Experts gathered at the University of Calgary for Congress 2016 who suggested the law should not be rushed during a panel called The Future of End-of-Life Decision-Making in Canada." Their words, "It's unconscionable that the federal government is looking to put in a bill that will have to be challenged," said Jocelyn Downey, a professor of health care ethics and law at the University of Dalhousie. End quote. Mr. Speaker, the same applies to this provincial motion. It fails the fine people of our province, and I understand why Albertans will be outraged. It is unacceptable that the NDP is just now contemplating its plan for creating critically important parameters around medical-assisted dying. This government has known for a year that creating parameters around assisted dying ultimately would fall to it. And yet here we are, mere days before the Supreme Court deadline, and at the very end of our spring session, cobbling together regulations for this most serious of acts. It's shocking. I dare say that if our former government tried to do something like this, the current government, perhaps the official opposition, other parties, and all Albertans would be screaming about this from the rooftops. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, if I haven't been already. Whether or not the Supreme Court's decision takes effect after June 6th is a question that has already been answered. I am not debating that whatsoever. Instead, the issue at hand is whether or not the appropriate safeguards are in place to protect vulnerable Albertans, to ensure health professionals who have a conscientious objection to participating in any way with assisted death are respected and protected. Respect faith-based care facilities which may have concerns with the practice, and respect Indigenous communities which may need assistance, special assistance in dealing with spiritual concerns. And obviously, that's a partial list. Albertans may have many more concerns. Those are just some of the issues that Alberta needs to grapple with as it develops measures for implementing medical assistance in dying. What about mental health support for families who will go through this extremely highly emotional and potentially psychologically damaging experience with their loved ones? What about ensuring similar supports available for doctors, nurse practitioners, as well as nurses, pharmacists, and professional caregivers? There are many other outstanding issues, such as, without national legislation in place, will Alberta's regulations more closely align with the federal government's plan for a more restrictive and conservative approach, which offers greater protection for vulnerable Albertans? The federal legislation also proposes to restrict assistance in dying to those for whom death is reasonably foreseeable. On the other hand, Alberta's regulations could run closer to the Supreme Court's liberal approach, which opens assisted dying to mature minors, people whose mental illness causes them extreme anguish, and other Canadians who live with severe discomfort from a physical condition. The discrepancy is extremely troubling. We cannot take these questions lightly, and we must take the time to answer these questions. A rushed debate in this House with the end result giving Cabinet permission to make the final decision behind closed doors and then releasing them to Albertans as a fait accompli is unconscionable. More hard questions that, and I say this with respect, but it's true, this new Cabinet does not have a great deal of experience. It's simply a matter of time. Other questions they will have to ask and answer include, what about whether patients can administer lethal drugs themselves, or whether a physician has to perform the procedure? What about access to medically assisted dying outside of our large cities? The rural dynamic is completely different. A patient may have trouble finding 2 doctors in a small community to approve a request. Does this set up a double standard within the province of Alberta? What about doctors who would prefer to see palliative care improved for their patients rather than have to offer them this choice. If their patient seeks referral to a doctor who will perform the procedure, will they have to provide that referral? And my heart is troubled when I think about this next question. Does that make them complicit in their final act, and is this fair to them? These are extremely important questions that Albertans are just starting to think about. So, colleagues, please, why shut this conversation down so quickly? Why limit it to just us here and now in this House? Mr. Speaker, this government has already drafted these regulations. There's no way it could have started from scratch a year after it received notice that it was going to have to develop them, let alone days before they are to be approved. So today, this may be the most important question. Why did the government choose to release the draft regulations for all Albertans to see and ponder and discuss only this afternoon? There can be no reason not to have made them public and seek input on what was tabled today, before today. Yes, there was a panel. They didn't present these. And we're not talking about a proposed text for a directive, ministerial order in council. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about the loved ones of those Albertans facing an emotionally difficult experience. We're talking about professionals entering a new world of healthcare, if you want to call it that. As legislators, we understand the task at hand. It relates to the determining of parameters of delivering this service to Albertans. What we in the Progressive Conservative Caucus cannot accept is that this government left it so late that we are now pressured to offer Cabinet carte blanche to ensure that they are done right on time. And again, with great respect, Mr. Speaker, for many, many reasons that I've been hearing about for a year, I do not think that Albertans, I'm going to phrase this very kindly, have had the time to build the trust in this government to make decisions like this for them at this time. I trust I'm being fair in that comment. So I ask again, with great respect, will you please let all Albertans have some time to digest this? It's only fair. Isn't it true, colleagues, that a short time ago, no one referred to this as assisted dying? It was euthanasia, or mercy killing. At the very least, our society needs some time to figure this out. To emphasize a reason for this, I quote a surprising source from a recent article in the Ottawa Citizen. The quote begins, "While the Liberal government says time is of the essence in passing its assisted dying legislation, former Prime Minister Paul Martin says what Canada needs is a good bill, and that debate on the proposed law should not be bound by arbitrary timelines. I'm like a lot of Canadians," Martin said. That was on Thursday. I think it's a very, very difficult subject, and if I just look at myself, I'm still just thinking it through. I think it's important we get it right, and that we don't be bound by arbitrary timelines. That's the former Liberal Prime Minister of this country. This goes far beyond any party lines, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, this is good advice for federal Liberals, the provincial NDP, all Canadians and all Albertans. And Mr. Speaker, I acknowledge that Alberta is legally required to develop regulations surrounding medical assistance in dying. However, I completely disagree with giving Cabinet sole authority to develop the final regulations in secret and without fulsome debate in our province and in our assembly. As such, I cannot support the motion. Getting this wrong can be catastrophic for our society, and I implore all members of our House, do the right thing and vote with...
Thank you, Honourable Member.